My name is Ayan Harris. I'm an incoming senior at Centennial High School, and I am one of the co-founders of PAIGN and Peace.
My name is Mayahuel Gutiérrez Malik. I'm an incoming senior at Uni High, and I'm also one of the co-founders of PAIGN and Peace.
Our organization was really started around the time George Floyd was murdered, and the series of protesting started to emerge. We all found each other through Naomi Dupree, and we were like, we have to do something. So at first it kind of was just like, we're planning a protest, and then it was like, oh snap, we all work so well together, let's create something bigger.
Yeah, and I mean, it was really kind of just a fluke that we all came together. It was just voices saying, hey, this is really bad, we should start a protest, and somebody else on the phone like, oh, you would be really good, you want to come join this? And it was just, we got together, made that protest at Hessel, and we were like, okay, let's do something from this, let's keep it going. I think one thing that really solidified us as a group and made us kind of, feel comfortable in what we were is the fact that we're not tied to any organization. And so for us to come together as a group of, at the time, high school students, and Naomi had just graduated, but at the time, high school age students, to be able to come together and talk about these issues in a space where it's really free and open. We're not tied to any organization in the way Boys and Girls Club or AVID is, right? Through any of the school groups. We are just students coming together, talking about these issues, talking about what we want to see happen in our community, in our schools, and that's why we decided we need to make this a more lasting thing instead of it just being a protest that was put on by different students. I mean.
Yeah, and I think that also, what was the question?
It's just like, what are our goals? How do we decide to come together?
And another thing is that we all were passionate, and we were women too, and it was a women's led organization, and that's something that I feel like drives us very strongly, because we're all feminists in a way, and we're all revolutionary feminists. And so I think that's another thing that just keeps the ball rolling constantly for us.
And it was just like, this hadn't been, or we didn't have a space like this before. We had our own individual groups in school that we were part of. We had, other extracurriculars, or we'd been talking about these things in our families, or part of something somewhere else, but we didn't have a place where we could come together as students and just talk and do things again and organize and use our voice, have the community hear us. I think it was unintentionally just people from Champaign, and now we just want as many people who want to come to be a part of it. And even though it was led by women and we founded it as women, it's not a only women group. We want anybody to come if they feel passionate about that. It's a safe, it's a space to be here, talk about these issues. If you have a passion for it, use your voice.
We try to say from freshman year of high school to about your sophomore, junior year of college, just to keep the age gap nice and sweet. But that's like...
It's not strict.
Yeah, it's not a strict age
We say
gap.
high school,
we say high school
age
girls, but at the same time, like if there's college mentors who are trying to help us, come help us, It's just the retainer, I guess, we have on the cap age.
There's a space for everybody
Yeah.
in the group if you want to be a college student and help us out. But the point of having something more high school age based is the fact that colleges already have these kind of organizations. That's why we see BSFR, Her Urbana, things like that have arisen, and colleges have those kind of spaces. And we didn't see a ton of them in high school. That's why it just happens to be, we're trying to keep this at a shorter age range. And we want this to be something that younger students can connect to, so they can see us doing it and being like, oh, I want to do that when I'm in high school, because there aren't really these spaces for middle schoolers or elementary schoolers, and there doesn't necessarily need to be like elementary school protests being put on, but for people to be able to look at us and for kids to be able to say, oh, these are kids that's my brother's age, I can listen, I can be a part, I can come to these events, I can be a part of this movement.
Yeah. We have 2 meetings a week. We have our founding members meeting, and that's just when we discuss like our next events and what's going on and how we're going to move forward in our plans and our donations, everything, those types of things. And then we have the whole member meeting, and we usually meet either at a bakery, or we'll try to FaceTime or Zoom. And that's just when we tell this is what we've come up with. Can you tell us how you feel about it? Give us feedback. What do you want to see us do? Tell us what to, kind of point us in the direction that you're feeling or the community is feeling, and that's kind of just where we go to collaborate, really.
And we're really a non-hierarchical organization. We tend to have our meetings at one of our mentors' homes, and so we didn't want to overload them with a bunch of new members. And so I was like, hey, you guys want to come to Picara? It's close to my home. I can walk there. So we kind of started a trend for the bigger meetings to just be at Picara with outdoor seating. Everyone's distanced, and people feel more comfortable coming to that space instead of being in someone's home. And it's not, I don't want to say like the two meetings are like, this is where we decide things and this is where we distribute the ideas, but it's more just like if we have, okay, somebody emailed us for an opportunity, the next meeting, hey guys, this is what happens. What's your, how do you fit into this? What do you want to be doing? What do you want to be leading? Do you have any ideas? And it's more just like a, I don't know, it gets passed down. And the big distinguishment between the two meetings is just one of them's in someone's home and we don't want to overload them, and the other one's, you know, at Picara for the time being. You guys might know us from the big march at Hessel Park, June 6th, right?
Yeah, June 6th was like the biggest protest in
the history of Champaign.
Yeah, the history of Champaign, Urbana ever. So that kind of felt really dope and cool to just lead that, and we're all, you know, children. We also have been in Muhammad with the My Culture Is Not Your Costume protest, and that was just really to touch on the face that they had a blackface incidents, and a lot of people in Muhammad who do appropriate African American and Latinx culture, and they don't know where it's coming from. And then we have the Hate No Fear?
Yeah, No Hate No Fear, immigrants are welcome here. We did a protest regarding ICE and immigration after Donald Trump's decision about, you know, DACA students and immigrants here not being able to go to school, and then rescinding that, just the whole thing. And obviously none of these issues are new, but those are the protests we have held, and we've been at other people's protests, PSL's protests. You know, we're there in the background, but those are the things we're usually leading. And that big protest is what got people's attention.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my teachers also, one of my teachers started the Black Teachers Alliance in Champaign. And so she came to our first protest, and she's like, we're really proud of you, so if y'all need anything, just reach out. And that's really been a lot of the feedback that we have been receiving is, we're very proud of you, let us know if you need anything, any help, what we can do in our schools to change the narrative, really.
And there are a lot of teachers that are already pushing for things like removing SROs out of school. That's one of our biggest goals. We want to get them out entirely. And so they're being able to say, look, you have this power, this platform, please let people know. This is a board meeting you can come to. You can email us here with your complaints. This is how you can get your voice out about stuff happening in your schools. And so on the one hand, it's like, we're very proud, we want to support you, but also we're doing stuff to actually change things in the Unit 4, please. And you know, the Urbana district as well, I don't know what Urbana district is called, but the Urbana schools, please, you know, help us in that way. And I think once it gets to the winter and we can't do as many things outside, we'll be focusing on the kind of more underground, you know, going to board meetings, having virtual learning sessions or whatever it may be, hosting movie nights, more virtual things for the community.
For CCR, it's a bigger, it's a huge organization of organizations. And I think that when we stand as a united front versus one organization by themselves, they're going to see us as more of a, I don't want to say threat, but stop my, okay, they're going to see us more as a threat and a force to actually acknowledge and see that it's not just one organization or two organizations saying these things and demanding these actions. It's a huge coalition of organizations. It's a huge coalition of organizations demanding action and change.
At the same time, though, you know, we use this protest a lot to garner attention and to shed light on issues, but there definitely needs to be a bigger push for things like voting on your local, you know, city council, your school board members, that kind of stuff, voting in the bigger elections. And that's, in my opinion, what I think will make the biggest amount of change, because we do all these protests and we do all these big things to get the community out there. But another thing that will really, you know, create the difference is to let the community know how you can impact these things. We don't like SROs. Okay, what board meetings can we go to tell them we want them out of our schools? How can my voice be used to actually create a change in my community? And so we're using all these protests, and that's great, but there's a second hand to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's the actual being out there, physically out there protesting, and then there's also the professional setting of us being physically at these meetings where they're making the decisions that directly affect our communities and our people?
I mean, the short answer, no, protests are not enough, but there are a lot of other things that we can do, right? We need people to be out there doing the physical things that shed light on these issues, and I think that's one of the biggest things of protest, and to show everybody that we're not afraid, we're here, we're putting up a unified front, but at the same time, we need people to be calling the people in power, letting people know when board meetings are happening, telling, going to those board meetings, voting, whether it be city council, school board, or, the bigger election, telling people how they can register to vote, phone number, mail-in ballots, getting people resources online, but also through, newspaper, every outlet we can. There's a space for everybody in the movement at the same time. It's not going to be just done by protesting. There's like the physical, and then there's like I want to say more like underground.
Yeah.
I feel like protesting is like it's not fun, but it's kind of the fun work, right? You're out there, you're screaming, and you're like, you feel like you're really doing something. You feel like the power of the movement. And going to a board meeting is like, well, I'm at a board meeting, but
at the same time, that's how people shut like the community out, because they're like, the community's not going to come to a school board meeting. They don't care. And so that's where we trick them and say, we care. Here we are. We're showing up in solidarity together and saying this is what needs to happen to our schools, because this is our youth, and this is what's going to happen. And these major decisions are affecting our youth severely, and it's not helping because their parents don't know when these meetings are, or when they can vote, or how they can vote, or when they can attend. So
yeah.
No, protests aren't enough.
Protests are not enough. And if you feel like I'm a kid, all I can do is protest or sign petitions. Go hassle your school board members. Find out when the meetings are. Tell your parents, look, they're trying to pass these things under the rug. I'm not old enough to sit and be a change. I'm not 18. I can't register to vote. If you're 16, if you're going to be 18 by November, you can register for your Democratic primary, right?
Yeah,
but I was just going to say, if there are ways for you to get in touch with the things, let them know. They really want to make sure people don't know about the decisions that are happening. They try to pass them under the rug. We need to put the pressure on them and let them know we're listening, we're paying attention. You don't get to just make decisions about our community without the community knowing about it. That's not how democracy works. Maybe it is. Well, it is in the U.S.
Yeah. Like with the voting thing that you were saying, is you can register to vote at the age of 16. If you're 17 before your primary, like if you're 17
before your
primary, before your
you can vote for your Democratic.
You can vote for your Democrat or Republican in the primary, and then
if you're 18
by November 2nd, you're able to vote in the election.
And there are so many different ways you can get registered to vote. There are booths at almost every single campus event. They always have. You can register online. Get your mail-in ballot. Mail-in ballots take 2 weeks to process, so make sure if you're sending them in, you give yourself extra time for it to be heard. And
they're stopping the date now. Trump is trying to slow down mailing, so mail-in ballots won't go in.
So make sure you get your mail
done by October 28th.
Yeah, October 28th I think is the date.
Yeah, look at this.
And donate to the post office. He wants the post office to go under. Support your local post office. Make sure your mail-in ballot will be heard. Get your voice out there. That protests are not enough, but there's a lot that we can do, which is good. So in terms of making change in our community for things like school or like city council and things, going to the meetings, voting on the acts that they're trying to pass and they want to pass under the rug is really important. And even as a kid, you can just hassle your school, find out when the meetings are and tell your parents, making sure you're registered to vote. If you're 16 by October 28th, no, 16, if you're gonna be 17 by the time of the Democratic primary, you can sign up. She'll say the voting stuff actually. You say the voting stuff.
Okay. So for the voting, how it works is you can be registered to vote by the time you turn 16, and if you're going to be 18 before the next presidential election, you are able to vote in your primary as long as you're 17. So as long as you're 17 before your primary, your state's primary, you're able to vote, and as long as your county clerk, just make sure you're up to those dates, because sometimes you're like, okay, everyone's saying vote for them, so let me vote for them. So just make sure you're doing the correct research needed to make sure that you're comfortable in your own community as well.
And in terms of I think the thing that people get a little bit not misconstrued, but especially people in power, they're like, oh, you got your protest, that's good. Look at them, they're so angry, and they get all their voices out there. But they don't expect us to then go under and be like, no, we're gonna come to your meetings. We're actually gonna pay attention to all the stuff you're trying to get past us, because they can make a big show of being like, oh, we'll paint the streets in your name. But secretly, we're making sure all the police are still in the schools again, right? And so going to protest is really awesome if you can. In the pandemic, make sure you're being safe and wearing a mask. It's a really good way to show your solidarity, and you feel the power when you're at a protest with the chants and everything.
You feel the power when you're changing policies and showing out basically for your community in these meetings, in these settings.
And especially, it's a lot of stress already for people of color to be facing these issues. And I think one thing everybody can do is, educate yourself, but especially if you are a white person, don't expect other people of color to educate you on these issues, because it's not their job. And Google is free, and there are so many resources online. You can even go to our website. I personally curated an entire list of books, podcasts, movies that you can watch, it's something you can watch and educate yourself a little bit better. And it's not they're not boring things, Watch 13th on Netflix. It's a really beautiful movie.
And oh my gosh.
It will make you feel like, oh, okay, maybe being educated in this movement isn't a boring thing. And that's a small way you can,
you can
make an
read
impact
up on multiple African-American authors, James Baldwin. You can read autobiographies from revolutionaries such as C.P. Newton, George Jackson, Angela Davis. There are so many resources. You just have to be willing to go out and find them and put the time in so you can educate yourselves, other than just saying, look at the protests. Then you have the backings of why we do this and why it's been such a generational thing to protest.
So short answer, no, protests are not enough. But luckily there's so much you can do, and there's a place for everybody in this movement, because it's a marathon. So even if you feel like, I can't vote, I can't go out, I can sign a petition for free.
For free. And you can repost it for free, or you can even donate money to help get rid of the people.
But do not donate to change.org, because they're a private company and they actually don't take any of the money and give them to the organizations. They take it and keep it for themselves. They're not a nonprofit. So sign all their petitions, but don't give them money.
Yeah, just post them for free. Don't chip in no $3.
So there's something that everybody can do for this movement.
For sure. Create your own petition.
Be the person to speak up at your school, in spaces that you're in your work and your friends. Be the one to just say, hey, that comment was not okay. That was uncomfortable. That's doing something for the movement.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like, wow, nothing's happening. I feel like all my efforts, I can't do anything. I'm so small and helpless. I have no voice. You have power to do change in your own everyday life.
Yeah, tell them not to gaslight you. Tell them to stop with their microaggressions.
Someone calls you, you're so exotic, be like, no, I'm not a zoo bird. I'm not a toucan. I'm not an extinct animal.
Calm down. Don't tell her to calm down.
There's something everybody can do to help. And protests are awesome. They're fun. Go out and protest, but make sure that's not the only way you are supporting the movement.
For the movement.
To join our organization as a member or a volunteer, we have something there that allows you to just submit a form, or if you need our help for anything, submit a form.
Yeah, if you want to paint a piece at any time, submit the form.
We're there, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it's just Paint a Piece.
Yeah.
It's an easy handle, Paint to Piece.
Yeah, Gmail, Paint a Piece.
paintapiece@gmail.com.
We're Paint a Piece everywhere.
But Paint T-O Piece.
Paint a Piece on a t-shirt.
Paint a Piece, there you go. Yeah.
Aaliyah Lewis case is a very sensitive case. There's the video, there's the evidence of what the police did to her and how they hurt her. But then there's a lot of other things that they've said, in the car with her, or when they got to the police station with her. And so it's just the narrative of she antagonized them. And I mean, it doesn't make any sense for anybody to be like, I've seen this girl, she's tiny and she's short, so it doesn't make any sense for, and I think with the series of the George Floyd incidents and all of these things, I'm glad that we're able to show her solidarity and show up and show out for her, because she deserves justice. With the charges being dropped, we've been pushing for it, and we were out there in July, and they said that she had to go to trial. And so we all were very hurt for her and angry for her, because, we've seen the video, but of course another black woman is being victimized by the system when she did nothing wrong, and the police officers are getting a pat on their wrist. Don't do that again. And he's like, this gets me so tight. Might well go.
I mean, it's another example of, how the system is failing us as people of color. And obviously I'm benefiting from the system because I look really white, and that's something we have to talk about and understand. But I think it's also, her case especially is one that people on the other side of the argument can pick at, because they can say, yeah, well, she fought back.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, she's 100 pounds, like maybe 5'2". Her fighting back really won't hurt any of these officers, but they can still say she fought back, right? Because they want this, they want to have, you know, in the perfect scenario where they will support, you know, a person of color being attacked and actually be like, oh, they need that person to absolutely not struggle, not have a completely clean record. They can't have anything to basically criminalize them in any way, shape, or form. They have to literally be doing you know, it has to be the perfect case. So in every situation, and especially this one now, you have everybody rallying for her because obviously she doesn't deserve what she's getting, and that's why we're pushing for the charges to be dropped, and why it's so frustrating, because even in our own community this stuff is happening, but with the entire climate that's coming on, you get all the other the other side coming out of their holes and being like, well, you know, she deserves it because she fought back.
And it's also another situation of it's frustrating because you can see a white girl or a white man doing the same exact thing as Aaliyah, and they'll give them community service. So instead of sending her to prison, make her do community service then. Like, you have all these tools, but you're trying to make an example out of another black person, and that's just not sitting well with us anymore. It hasn't sit well with us at all, and now we're going to fight back. And if we have to protest outside the courthouse, which we will continue to do, we will do it, because she deserves justice, and she does not deserve to go to prison for being beat up, having ribs broken, being hurt, being traumatized by this system that's supposed to protect us.
And regardless of what your past is, you don't deserve to be attacked by the police.
Simple.
One thing that's been, and you can see this on like protesting signs either, like across in the different protests, people have held these signs up, and especially in areas where, you know, the police have come out with guns and everything. It's like, how come the police get to have the excuse of, oh, they felt scared, they felt attacked, but protesters have to remain calm. You know, kids have to remain calm in these situations. Right. Kids of color who are being arrested because they fit a description of a 30-year-old man as a 14-year-old boy have to remain calm. You know, why is it the people who are supposed to protect and serve get to let their emotions get the best of them, and that's an excuse, but the rest of us who they're protecting and serving have to remain calm? And that's the exact thing in the scenario, right? She doesn't have to remain calm. She's being thrown to the ground for no reason. She's being sat on for no reason. But on the other side, the people who want to say, well, look, she's fighting back, she shouldn't resist arrest. And so, you know, with any kind of movement, you get both sides coming up. And that's, I think, one of the biggest pressure points for every one of these cases, because on the one hand, everybody who's fighting for them is like, look, nobody deserves to be killed. I don't care if their $20 bill was counterfeit, which in the case of George Floyd, it was not.
Oh, okay.
And everybody else is like, well, you know, they stole diapers from Walmart in 2010, so they're criminal.
Yeah.
You know, there's on both sides, there will always be things you can nitpick. Yeah. We were really frustrated because there was a News Gazette article that was released by a certain News Gazette editor, Mary Shanks. Mary somebody. And in it, she released all the names of the people who were arrested, their charges, and the fines, as well as completely irrelevant information for a lot of people. And we couldn't figure out if the people who she released the random information about were actually people of color, but she's had a history, a past of being, you know, a little racially biased, a little bit racist.
So she posted things like, father of two, child on the way, like that.
High blood pressure, risk of diabetes, right?
You know,
in the car, found an open bottle of tequila. That's not necessary for their charges. This is not. This doesn't pertain to the situation at hand. And so it was like, this is just another example of what's going on, because you can think to yourself, oh, but they got arrested, they were rioting, they deserve the fine. Okay, but separate from that, why do I need to know that her mother just died and she's a single mother right now? Why do I need to know he has a history of diabetes and hepatitis C? What information does that give me, right? Why do I need to know that? And why, you know, in the statements she released, do some protesters have higher bail fines than others for seemingly the same crime, if you look at the charges against them, right?
And I also think it's just a matter of the way that they write these articles. they want the people to prosecute the people who are in these articles and who they're about first before they even get a chance to in courts. So when they get to courts, they can say this is what their community is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also plays into the looting and stuff because we were outrageously angry with them, but at the same time we understood where they were coming from because you're angry, and I mean,
you should
they
be.
have every right to be angry. There's been so many cases of police brutality here in Champaign County, like countless amounts. So yeah, you have every right to be angry.
And worldwide, if you have a chance to be murdered by walking down the street,
Just
yeah,
because
you're gonna be
black.
angry.
Yeah, you have every right to be pissed off. Sorry for cussing on this thing, but you have every right to be angry, and I don't think people should just stop sugarcoating it. So with like the looting and stuff, I mean, what y'all think was gonna happen? I don't mean to sound like crazy, but
It's been decades that this has been going on.
Yeah, and it was nationwide. It wasn't just like we were doing.
And the reason
yeah.
it started, for people who don't understand why those people looted that Target and started, rioting against that, was because that Target specifically in the area that it started wouldn't sell milk to the protesters because they knew that milk, helps with the tear gas, and Target refused to sell it. And Target itself came out with a statement and said, we understand, we support, our products can be replaced, human lives cannot. And sorry, to answer your question, we've been kind of going off of it, but we were really upset, and so at our very first protest, we called that out. We were like, why is all this information being released unnecessarily? This lady has a history of racial bias, and people need to understand why these people are angry. It's, if you're gonna say, I support Black Lives Matter, but once they break a window, I'm out. Yeah. You are saying that the price of fixing a window is equated to higher than a human life. You're saying, oh, well, they hit my car. Your car is more important than that person's life. Material objects are more important than these people of color's lives, right? You're saying that, well, I support the movement, but I deem this material object to be more important than if you die or not.
They're using the excuse that this is not what MLK would have wanted, when MLK was one of the most hated men in the world when
he was assassinated.
He was literally assassinated in a hospital with doctors who were trying to help. We're upset about it. We really want, but it also goes back to the state's attorney and what she's doing and how we're trying to talk to her, but she doesn't want to hear us. So
Julia
Reeds.
Reeds. So that's why we say hassle your council member, hassle your state's attorney, call them, email them. Yeah, don't just send the same email them. Yeah. They're like whatever it's called, personal assistants or whatever, can't junk all the emails if they don't look the same. Yeah. Email them, have somebody copy and paste, and then at the end add a little message about like this is wrong. Email them.
Exactly.
Bombard them.
Yeah, if we push our city people, they can push their higher ups, and then they can start pushing.
You only need to be 13 to have an email address with Gmail.
Their state political,
agenda.
And boom. CCR, where we're working a lot with like creating some type of bail fund for these people.
And there's a Champaign County bail fund that exists, but it's more about directing funds to them.
Yeah, so that's basically what we can do, because more so we're the youth, and the youth are being put in juvies, so we really can't contact them. So we're just trying to rely on CCR for that kind of information.
And then supporting their families and like we said, hassling the state's attorney.
And showing up.
She's the one who has the power. Julie Reeds has the power. Email, call her number or her office number. That's what we can do, because until we, and that's what we have been doing and you can do as a minor. Yeah. But until, she's married to a cop. No, but until we get, more information, until another decision gets passed, we have to work on what we have, and that's getting them out, covering their bail funds, hassling the state's attorney because she's the one who has the jurisdiction over this, and making sure we're getting their stories heard, making sure people are knowing what's happening, and this conversation is not, dying down or getting muffled by other situations, because it's hard, especially in this climate. So many things are arising and so many things get pushed under, and worldwide, right? With the bombing that just happened in Lebanon, everything is blowing up. Literally blowing up. Everything is maximized. There's so many different things going on. It's really hard to get a specific issue out, but because we are a small community in Champaign, we need to make sure that these issues are being talked about consistently. People know what's going on and they know what they can do to support. So hassle Julia Reeds, donate to the bail fund.
And to stay up to date with what's going on. Yeah.
Post it on social media. Let people know what's happening.
Yeah, social media is a huge outlet.
Giant.
Yeah.
Vote on the board.
Yeah, voting.
Go to the
is
meetings.
A huge thing, because right now what they're trying to do is give us a task force. We don't want your task force. We don't want to, give y'all feedback on how to be a better cop. We want you out of here. We don't want your task force.
We don't want our teachers to have to tell us to cut out box tops for funding or have to buy their own school supplies.
Yeah, like
you have what was it? Oh, Allison had this.
$1.3 million.
They got, like, out of all of the funds for the community, they got like 30% of it, I think,
Yeah,
and 3% went to like
the schools.
community resources, basically. So, and I remember cutting out box tops, and I was like, that never clicked in my head until now, that I was like, wow, we really had to cut out basically food stamps for school supplies because we couldn't, our teachers couldn't afford to buy our own stuff.
Defund the police, we mean defund them and put this money into the schools that need the money. Like, there's no reason that should be such a hassle. There's no reason that students who are their families can't afford for them to get, the testing that they need for their AP classes. They're smart enough, but they can't afford the testings. They shouldn't be able to take those tests.
There's no reason our police need brand new riot gear and brand new rubber bullets that they ordered from Chicago when our teachers have to buy their own pencils for class.
And Clorox wipes for their students, or they have to buy school supplies for their students.
Because the schools are reopening.
There's no reasons that the police officer should have a new car every 4 years. There isn't. Truly, there isn't.
There's no need.
Like, y'all have all this extra money for what? And then I feel like if you're going to have all this money for the police officers, at least get some people who are in there trained for mental health issues, because there's so many people that they're stopping on the streets who have severe mental health illnesses and they don't even realize it.
Or
and
they're
so
being called in.
them and attacking them, and they don't even know how to react, and they're like, no, like they're coming back at you because that's all they know.
Or they're being called in a situation where they're asked to de-escalate somebody with a mental health issue because that's who they tell you to call if you have a mental health issue.
Exactly.
Call the police, and then they're killing them because they don't know how to de-escalate the situation. Because it takes, like 6 weeks to go through police training, and that's less than it takes to become a hairdresser anywhere in the world.
You can't have an IQ over 175?
They specifically pick people that have low IQs because they want you to be able to follow their orders. Yeah. I'm serious. They will turn you away from the police academy if you have an IQ over, I think, 170. Yeah. And you can look it up. That's a verified stat.
Yeah, so when we say defund the police, we mean take away that money and put it in.
And defunding the police is not going to mean the police don't have the actual equipment they need to go out and stop crime.
Yeah, and so that's what we're trying to decide right now. Does defunding the police, we're trying to figure out how and why and what we're going to need them. So for a domestic dispute, we don't want the dang police to be called for.
We want a mediator
dispute.
instead.
A mediator of some sorts. Yeah, they can maybe, have a vest on or something, but we want a mediator of some sorts, because the police is going in there with a biased opinion 9 times out of 10, and they're ready for something to go down. They're ready to arrest someone. They're not ready to de-escalate a situation.
If a drunk man is yelling to himself on the street, I don't need a police to come in loaded with guns, and they're not going to use any of their non-lethal weapons first, which that's a different conversation. Why can't the police use any of their non-lethal weapons before they use their guns? I don't want you to come armed with a crazy drunk guy on the street. I want somebody who works with crazy drunk people to come and talk to the man. He's not disrupting me. If he was threatening me, maybe that's a different conversation.
And we want the chokehold completely abolished from Champaign, any police, honestly, but especially Champaign police, ugh. Because what they're saying now is it only in life or death situations are you allowed to use the chokehold.
You have a gun though. What situation is life or death?
Which is life or death.
Wow, our police don't need guns.
That doesn't make any sense to me. Life or death situation, there should be no situation that you're literally choking someone to death.
If you are in the proximity where you can choke someone, there are other ways for you to gain control of the situation. Defunding the police means police still get money and they're still in effect, and abolishing police means we don't have the police as our means of protection. We, allocate our resources to create community things, community mental health resources that can, be called if you need it. Community leaders who will come and help de-escalate the situation if you feel threatened, that kind of thing. And more specifically, we don't have police in our school because that's unnecessary. We don't need guns in our hallways.
Yeah. That's the main thing right now. Pain and Peace's main focus is when we say abolish the police, we're meaning abolish SROs in our schools, because
there's no need.
There's no need, and at Centennial right now, there's about 3 or 4 cops that circle in and out. And I think that's something that causes intimidation, for one. For two, that's creating another way, a quicker, easier way to the school to prison pipeline, and it's causing fear. and police brutality, because there's fights in our schools and the principals aren't breaking it up. It's the police officers macing the students and macing the whole school. So then that causes another scared, toxic environment where minority students are scared to come to school because at any given time they could profile us too, and that can be our last moment at school. So when we say abolish the police right now, we're talking about abolishing SROs. Why you need to be there with the gun? And if there was like a school shooting, they'd leave the building anyway.
It's happened before, and they've said we actually don't have to go towards the shooter in a school shooting.
Yeah, so what are you there for, honestly?
And the whole point is, especially in the climate, as we go back to school, this is already such a traumatic time for students of color to be face to face with a police officer every single day in your halls. That's not creating a safe space in schools. If you complain that your minority students are not succeeding, yet you are giving them trauma every single day as they walk through the halls, you're not creating a safe space for your students. You're not prioritizing your students' mental health or their well-being above anything else. Yeah. And if that's not what you're doing, what is your point as a school teacher, as a school administrator?
You're part of the problem as well.
Put more mental health facilitators in the schools.
Yeah,
put more counselors of color.
Yeah. Put
people who are meant to de-escalate situations without force, without mace, tasers, or guns.
And to all these funds for the police and these SROs, put that towards teachers with training, because a lot of the teachers are not trained enough.
Or pay the teachers. Our teachers are not paid enough.
Yeah, there's so much you could do just to get
Put funds towards restorative justice. It works. They tried it. It works. It's worked across states.
Yeah.
Restorative justice. It works. There's no need for police in our schools.
There really isn't. So
as we're seeing today, there's not that much need for police in our cities either. Over-policing of cities only leads to higher crime rates because it's over-policing of cities. Everybody who wants to talk about black-on-black crime, I guarantee you, if you over-police a white, rich neighborhood, you will still get higher crime rates because you're over-policing the community.
And half of the time they want to talk about black-on-black crime, it's the police officers, the dirty cops giving guns back to these communities. So there's another reason why we should abolish them, because they're all dirty and bad.
Or you want to talk about black-on-black crime, but you're not going to talk about the racial profiling of arresting kids who fit the description because you over-sexualize black men and women.
Yeah, the stereotypes of black children looking like adults because they're tall.
But then that adds to your arrest rates, but you're not thinking about the fact that that's
a child. You just traumatized them.
For no reason. They actually weren't your perpetrator.
Reason, they're a perfect kid, but they were just walking.
And actually somebody else had already caught your perpetrator, but you were just like, oh, black kid on the street, get him out.
Let's go.
We are revolutionary.
Yeah, we're revolutionary. I think our revolution we want to start in schools and getting minority students in action more, because I feel like a lot of students, they're so smart and they're so wise and they're so woke, but they're so terrified to speak up and be in these spaces and places because they think they're only for white children.
And we're not even minority students. We're the majority of the population at your schools. And the fact that academia already pushes out students of color, that's only adding to our fear of being in schools. You know, the entire, what's it called? I don't know the term for it, but basically the entire pathway to AP classes and taking SATs and ACTs is already deemed against us. And I just learned today, the person who created the SAT was a eugenist, and he wanted it to show how much superior the academic talent of white people was. So you already have a test that's created not for students of color, against students of color, in a situation where they already are told they can't excel in any of the math or science courses. They have teachers who don't look like them. They're already in a space where they're seeing a police officer every single day, giving them more trauma.
And they're in classrooms. When they do choose to be in these AP classrooms, they're the only one. And so then it's also an awkward situation when they're talking about topics as in slavery or any historical topic at all in these AP classes. The whole class will turn around and look at them like you know, like they're a pawn or something. So it's
like an animal in a zoo.
Exactly. They don't want to feel like that. We don't want to feel like we're animals in the zoo in the educational system anymore.
And with this revolution, it comes more diversity in the administration, in the teachers, in the classroom. But that doesn't just mean we want to hear about the trauma that our generations have been through. We want to hear about success stories. Yes. You know, you talk about the civil rights era every single year, and you talk about Rosa Parks, MLK, and that's it. Oh, they boycotted a bus and everything was good. Or you talk about slavery, all the slaves were beaten and tortured. Yes, that is very important. But you do not give us a single success story to feel like we have any hope. You tell us your people have been oppressed for centuries. We already knew that.
We knew that.
Give us some kind of hope. Yeah. If you're going to teach us about us, which you don't anyways.
Teach us about the Black liberation movement.
Teach us
about
success.
Stonewall. Teach us about the
Make us
Renaissance
feel like
movement.
we have a place in the world.
Yeah.
Because you're already telling us you can't succeed in any of our science or math courses. You're already telling us we're erasing you from all of our history courses. You don't belong in higher testing classes or AP classes.
Yeah.
Nobody like you looks like you in this school. Police are in your hallways every single day waiting for you to mess up.
But you can have 2 or 3 teachers to make you feel like you're at home. That's not enough.
You can have a black librarian. That's it.
There you go. A black principal. Here you go.
That's what our revolution looks like.
Yeah.
We're starting at the schools because that's the people you are counting on to shape the minds of the next generation.
And if they're shaping
From pre-K to high school to higher education in college and universities.
Yeah. And if they're shaping them to think that Black people are just oppressed, then that's what the next generation's gonna think.
That we can never succeed. If you don't teach about any other kind of student of color besides slavery and the civil rights movement, how are they going to believe that they can do anything else but be oppressed? If you're gonna skip over the entire horrific fault of U.S. and Japanese internment camps,
right?
If you're not going to talk about the entire genocide of indigenous people, what do you expect us to do? I mean, realistically, we were one of the founding organizations that created CCARC, so we just happened to be here from the beginning. And being a part of this coalition allows us to just stay in contact with all these organizations that are already doing the work in our community that we want to be a part of, right?
It also allows us to stand in solidarity with these other organizations. So when we're there, we're able to collaborate with them, help them on what they need, get advice. But it also allows us to create these list of demands and some action plans so that we can all, be formed together in case of an event that something happens and one of us falls. We, as a coalition, can help each other and pick each other up.
And also because Pain to Peace is not tied to any higher organization, we can learn from these other organizations and we can also, teach them what are the youth talking about, what are we feeling in schools, and that's the whole point of having our organization not be tied to anybody else and being part of these spaces and having a younger voice. It's like, once I graduate, I'm not going to be able to tell you what's happening in the school system that needs to change because I'm not in it. Right?
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that everybody else in these organizing spaces understands what's going on in schools. And so when they're talking about making these demands, it's like, hey, let's listen to the people who this is actually going to affect.
We have an education rally coming up, and we're just gonna try to give back to people, make little back to school bins, because we're not going back to school for the first quarter at least, and so just give them bins. So it's like, this is what I need for school. This is a little setup for school. Give them some insight, hear from our teachers. Just have a feel good community feel, back to school event.
And also before school starts, let everybody know about the issues within the school system that we're facing, Talk about, as a student of color, what do I fear when I walk into a school? What are the challenges, or what does school even mean to me, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to talk about education as a whole.
Yeah. We're going to try to transition into a more digital, space, because coronavirus is still alive and well, so we're going to try to switch over to a digital, but still be very engaged with our community, our school districts, our systems, because we're creating these spaces, we're building these spaces, so we need to make sure we're keeping up with them and not just letting it die down because it's not hot outside anymore.
And making sure we're actually impacting the things we want to impact. If we're talking about school systems and SROs, making sure that when we're in school, we're making the connections. We're talking to our teachers, we're saying, look, we want this in the curriculum, and we want to hear this part of this. We don't want to just hear about Rosa Parks. We want to hear about Malcolm X. But I also want to hear about Black liberation. Yes. When I hear about the indigenous people, I don't only want to hear about how they were wiped out. I want to hear about two spirits and how the entire idea of non-binary folk and people with two genders came from indigenous populations and happened way before we were, even talked about this.
We just finna mess the city up again. Yeah.
From the inside, though.
Yeah.
From the inside.
Yeah.